Hope you enjoyed that intro right there. These are the Black Madison Strangers, and I was sent these by the Madhouse, so thank you very much to the Madhouse team for sending this great deck of cards, highly recommended. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most important topics in Magic, because I genuinely believe that the answer to this question defines good magicians from bad magicians. The question is, what happens when a trick goes wrong? I get asked this question all the time in comment sections and DMs and by email. People really want to know the answer to this question. And unfortunately, there isn't just one answer, because it really depends on the situation, on the trick, on so many variables, and how the trick has gone wrong, of course, is a massive variable in that. However, I can give some advice, because I've had experience with tricks going wrong, and I firmly believe that every magician has. And if a magician says that a trick has never gone wrong for them, I don't really believe that. I think that everyone has. Even the greats, even the legends and the greatest magicians of all time have had tricks go wrong. And so here is some of the things that they do, and some things that I do as well. I'm definitely not in the same category. That made it sound like I was saying I'm one of the greatest magicians ever. No, this is something that I do and something that lots of other magicians do. And the first thing really is to improvise. The more magic and the more sleights and techniques and methods that you know, it's like a snowball effect. You will become a more experienced magician, and you'll be able to handle these situations much more easily. If you are very, very limited in what you can perform, essentially I call it the toolbox. If you have a big toolbox of sleights and methods all stored up here, then you can implement them in the moment and improvise to save the trick. Remember, the spectator doesn't know what the trick is going to be, so you can change that and they will still have a very magical experience if you pick your tools wisely, and again, that will come with experience. I know this all sounds very, very vague and general, and basically I'm just telling you to learn more magic, but it honestly comes down to that. Just the more magic you know, the better you'll be. For me and for every other magician, this never stops. It's important to remember that it's not just sleights and methods and techniques that can get you out of situations, but whole tricks. Obviously, there's no way of doing a trick that involves a stack when the spectator has shuffled the stack. So you need to go onto a completely different trick, essentially. Unless you want to do a deck switch, which is a great little backup tool, again, that is something that you can have prepared. You can have another deck in stack, waiting to be switched, and do a switch. But if there's a lot of heat on the moment, and at that time you think you can't do a deck switch, then you're gonna have to go on to something else, which is why it's always important to have a trick that can be done with any shuffled deck at any time. So essentially, tip number one is to try and save the trick using your knowledge of magic, and if that fails, then tip number two is to reroute into a different trick entirely, and hopefully that'll be able to save you most of the time. But again, there are other ways of getting out of these situations. It's not always the magician's fault when a trick goes wrong. For instance, a prop might break in the middle of the performance, or a gust of wind will fly the cards up in the air, or you might get a tricky spectator. Obviously you can handle spectators, and maybe that is the magician's fault for not having audience management, but certainly a piece of elastic snapping is not really your fault. So in those situations, it's really important to back up your props. Especially if you're at a magic gig and you're having to perform the same tricks on loop. Bring more than one, just please bring more than one. I have had situations where props have broken on my first table and I've got to perform to 25 other tables and I've been left with a broken prop. That is a terrible situation, so always bring backup props, backup Sharpies in case the ink runs dry, all of that sort of stuff. The next tip sort of contradicts what I've just said, which was, obviously you need to back up your props, but also, I sort of recommend cutting down on your props, because if you're relying purely on props, on trick decks, on gaffs, on gimmicks, on flap cards, on loads and loads of material stuff, the material stuff is going to let you down at some point. So it is really, really important to not just rely on props. Props are great, don't get me wrong. I love a good prop. I love a good, trick, gaff, and all that sort of stuff. But they can let you down, so make sure to learn some tricks that use different methods. Again, it all sort of stems back to that first point of learning more magic and becoming a more experienced magician. I can sit here in front of the camera and give you as much advice as I possibly can. But that's not even going to come close to what experience will give you of actually going out and performing and practicing performing as well. Not just diving in straight at the deep end, but testing out new material. If you have something that might go wrong that you're not sure of yet, Don't perform it to, you know, the people at a corporate gig. Perform it to friends and family, and get comfortable performing the material with your inner circle who won't judge you because they've seen 100 magic tricks. And once you're comfortable with that, then you can move on to performing it to strangers. But do not start there. Start with the people who won't mind when a trick completely fails, which is what I do, and it's something that I do quite a lot. When I'm testing out a new thing, often it's my girlfriend who I will rope in and say, hey, watch this, what do you think? Yeah, so just test it out, and I think that's always a really good way of avoiding things going wrong. The next tip goes one step further than just cutting down on your props, and that's learning tricks that use no props whatsoever. Tricks where you can take your pinky finger and rip it right off and slap it back on, all that sort of stuff. I love propless magic. Obviously you've got propless mentalism in the How to Control Minds kit, but that stuff is great. You know, learning some of that is really, really good. And you know, if you know a couple of those great tricks that really can be done anywhere with nothing on you, and that's the stuff that makes you look like a real magician. The final tip I have for you in this video is very much a last resort. So you sort of should have gone through all of the other options before you come to this. If a trick's gone wrong, then try and save it, try and use your knowledge, try and move on to another trick. If your props have broken, try and do something propless. All of that stuff sort of should have happened by now, but if you've gone through all of that, and if it still is catastrophically going wrong for some reason, then just admit it. Just admit that the trick has gone wrong, apologize, and hopefully move on to something else. If you have any other tricks left in your repertoire, in your pockets, something to sort of give them that magical moment, I think is really, really important. I've never left a spectator with a trick having gone wrong and not performed magic. So you should always try to, but if you really, really can't, if you're just having an absolute nightmare, just admit it's gone wrong, apologize, and hopefully they will understand that magic goes wrong. It's a risky art form. So there we have it. That is my advice on what to do when magic goes wrong. I really hope you enjoyed this and took something away from it, and if you did, make sure to click the thumbs up button or smash it or whatever people do nowadays. And if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe, stick around on the channel, and I'm sure you'll enjoy my other videos if you enjoyed this one. And remember that tomorrow, September the 1st, the Dark Dystopian deck launches on Kickstarter alongside my brand new magic book, Dark Mode, which is packed full of my favourite, most powerful, impactful magic tricks ever, never been taught. Everything in the book is brand new. The whole book is just £15, and there are single tricks in there that would be sold for £15 by big magic companies just on their own. Hope to see you over on Kickstarter at midnight when the project launches. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.